please welcome Peter to the stage.
Kia ora mai ngā tātou. Can you hear me okay? Kia ora mai ngā tātou e hui mai nei e tēnei rā. Ko Peter Nuttall ahau, ngā tau iwi o te Waipanamu te iwi. Hibiscus te waka, te moana nui a kiva, te kāinga, Nisa Bula, Iakwe, Alop. My name's Peter Nuttall, I'm a climate change scientist, but I used to come and address forums like this 30 years ago. I was really fortunate to be a young policy analyst and worked for Huakina Development Trust for a number of years. 30 odd years ago I used to come up to Auckland, talk to little groups of 10 or 15 people from the council. That's what I thought I was going to be doing today. I had no idea that I was going to be delivering on this sort of scale. I'm going to take you on a little journey, if I can. So after I left Huakina, this is my team at the moment. My offices are in Marae, which is in the Marshall Islands. It's a coral atoll. This is our part of my young team. I'm a scientist and I mentor lawyers, young Pacific Island researchers, scientists, and we're in the planet-saving game every day. My centre is focused on transport, and we do two jobs. We backstop 9 Pacific Island countries and a bunch of Caribbean and African countries in the International Maritime Organisation, where we've just finished negotiating the first sectoral carbon price for any sector for international shipping. Back at home, we're trying to put low carbon solutions in place for our people. Has this got a... Does. So this boat here, the Juranai, we've just launched last year, 400-tonne ship achieving 70% fuel efficiency. It's a general government purpose vessel for the Marshall Islands. So that's the mahi that I do. We work internationally, negotiating climate change deals, and then we work at home trying to produce change. After I left Huakina, I was in Bougainville for the ceasefire, and then I worked in Timor, setting up a new government, and then my partner and I ran away on our old ship, and we lived up in the Pacific, and I was looking for this. I heard David Attenborough speak earlier. David Attenborough, when he was a young man in the 60s, went up in the Pacific looking for this boat, the Fijian Indrua, called the Kalia in Tonga, the Alia in Samoa, just the apex predator of the Pacific voyaging fleet. These boats can do 15 to 20 knots, 45 degrees off the wind. The big boats could carry 300 warriors. To sail. My sons built this for me 10 years ago, and we use it. We've probably trained 3,000 young Fijians and reintroduced their sailing culture. But the thing we didn't know anything about was the sail. We've got artefacts that we can put together. We were able to mirror the hulls almost perfectly, but the sails had long since rotted away, and that left me on this voyage of Odyssey, Jason and the Argonauts, if you like, travelling around the Pacific, trying to discover the sail, and that took us, these were these Indrua giant ships. The origin of this sail is actually in the Marshall Islands, the flying proa, and that took me to work in the Marshall Islands. So I don't know if anyone knows anything about the Marshall Islands. We're an atoll nation, 29 atolls, so we don't have any land. We just have these little rings of coral in the middle of the ocean with tiny little motu on them that people have been living on for about 4,000 years. So way back in the day, the ancestors come down through here, cross into here and off into Polynesia, but some of them around about 3,500, 4,000 years ago head north up into these atoll regions. We're the most bombed country in the world. After World War II, America just unleashed its fury. We were the testing zone. Our people have the highest rate of thyroid cancer in the world. Our women still give birth to jellyfish babies. And the other problem that we have, of course, is climate change. Back when we were writing this plan for the Manukau Harbour, climate change was a distant shadow on the horizon. No one was talking about sea level rise, no one was talking about ocean acidification, no one was talking about all these new evils that threaten us. These countries up here, the Atoll Nations, Kiribati, Tuvalu, Tokelau, the Marshall Islands, they're the first collateral damage to climate change. They're dead men walking, they will not survive. It's just a question of how much longer our people can hang on there to live there, probably not that long. So this is our capital city. It's down here. This is it here, around about 25,000 people squashed onto half a dozen coral motu that we've bulldozed causeways through. This is our capital, and you can see it's pretty. I think 2.5 metres is the highest place in the entire atoll, yeah? So we did some modelling. University of Hawaii came in and did some modelling, so that's why it's in feet. But you can see our capital here. We put 1 foot of sea level rise on it, and it's starting to eat into us. 2 levels of sea level rise, we lose about 50%. At 3 feet, less than 1 metre, and we lose 80% of the capital. And that. Right today, when I first went up to the Marshalls, every 2 or 3 years we'd get what we call a king tide. Storm surge coincides with a high tide, and you get a little bit of overlap. This now happens 7 or 8 times a year. For us, it's getting worse. You know, the sea just comes simply in, and we've got nowhere else to go. This is looking from my office on a king tide. Our urupars are all eroding. Into the ocean on every big king tide. We don't have any fresh water, we don't have any rivers, we don't have any hills, we don't have any reservoirs. So what we have is rainfall and a freshwater lens that sits underneath us on top of the coral, on top of the seawater, and every time we get an overlap like this, our fresh water becomes embrined and contaminated. Our gardens, such that we don't really have any soil, but people love the amount of work they put in trying to grow food up there is incredible, and of course it's all pointless now because it just gets inundated with salt. We have droughts where we don't have any water at all. We've had children die up there in the last few years. They get scabies, we can't wash them, there's no fresh water, and they basically scratch themselves to death. We're not giving up, we're fighting. We've got some really good scientists from around the world who've come in to help us, and we're trying to model what we can do with these improbable little bits of land. And we're trying, our children, our young researchers and our colleges are trying to plan their future. How do we adapt to the fact that this will not hold out water any longer? How can we readapt our land in order so our people can continue to survive for a few more generations, hopefully? Although sea level rise, ocean acidification, it's starting to look pretty impossible. That's the story from the Marshall Islands, but then this story is just repeated across the Pacific in every little country out there. I've lived in Fiji now on and off for the last 20 years, taught at the university there for a number of years. We've already relocated, I think, 14 villages in Fiji. We've got a priority list, which I think is around about 170 villages that we need to move off the coastal margins before they get inundated. But on this village, you can see how, firstly, the people stripped away all the mangroves because they tried to start an ecotourism business, and tourists don't like mangroves. They like, nice white beaches, and so we lost all our mangroves. And then the people built this seawall to try and stop the erosion coming in. No roads into this village, so everything, sacks of cement have to be bought in little fibres, and the boys will have to work every Sunday afternoon after church building the seawall, and then you get a massive storm event comes in like Cyclone Winston, and it just washes over the top and your seawall's dead. All your hard armour is of no use whatsoever, and so now this village is having to be relocated up into this area here. You can see our church, our rara out in front, the chief's house. This is communal land, whereas this land up here belongs to a Matangali, Fijian equivalent of a hapu. So within this village there will be at least 3 Matangali. The Matangali own all this land separately. They've owned it for 3,000 years, they've gardened it, they've fought over it, they've buried all their people there. And this land up here will belong to one Matangali. It doesn't belong to the village. And so the politics within the village of first having to move in the first place, and then who's going to have to give up land in order for the new village to survive, creates incredible social tensions that go on. And then the people don't really want to move. We moved a village in Serua province, we moved it 3 kilometres inland, beautiful village, all the houses are cyclone proof, there's a proper road that goes into it, there's proper water, we've got renewable electricity, fantastic little model village. Every morning at dawn the old women get up, they feed their men, and then they trek over the mountain 3 kilometres back to the old village, just to sit there amongst the gravestones, because they never wanted to leave in the first place, but it's impossible for them to keep living there. This story is repeated throughout the Pacific. The impacts of climate change are very real. Landslides, tidal inundation, it's coming down the pipe at us at a rate of knots, and brings me back to the Manukau Harbour. So for Whatapaka Marae, when I worked for Hurricane Development Trust, was my second home, living there with Auntie Carmen and my sister Denny. And I came home from COVID. I'd been away for 15 odd years, and the Auckland floods, Cyclone Gabriel, the fresh water just came down here, an atmospheric river, and took out the entire Marae complex up to about here. So that's all the toilets, the shower blocks, the wharekai, underwater, and you know and that matched a storm surge and a king tide that whacked the papakainga here, took out at least one house, but more importantly eroded the base of the urapa, and so what does Whatapaka mean to do in this situation? So sort of brought back memories, you know, and then so I've spent the last couple of years trekking down to try and give the people some help if I can. And what does this community mean to do, you know? So the old fellas standing there, the kaumātua on the pai, let's build a seawall, you know, and how high do we need to build this seawall if it's going to protect us really? And that's really what I came here to talk to you about. So we've got this beautiful new map. This was a headline earlier in the month, Auckland's preparing for climate change realities. And we've got this beautiful new website where you can go and you can click on somewhere like Whatapaka and it will bring you up, here's all your scenarios. Yeah, and if you look at this scenario map, I'm sure you're all familiar with these graphs. You know, you've got a low impact, high impact. This is out to 125 years' time. Sea level rise 2 metres. 125 years, sea level rise 2 metres, no problem. You know, surely we're going to be able to fix that. In fact, you only need something less than 1 metre within the next 100 years. It's just a bit of concrete, we'll be able to solve it. My problem with that is that this science is now so far out of date, it's not funny. This is, Tim Lenton would have to be one of the leading climate change scientists in UK. We've been fortunate to work with him over the years. The Society of Actuaries, and what is an actuary? An actuary is someone that comes along and actually tells you what the cost of a disaster is going to be. They're the people that tell the insurance companies when to insure you and not to insure you. So this is the latest science. In fact, it's now 2 years old, but what they're talking about here is what if these aren't the only scenarios? What if there's an accelerated runaway climate change track, even though very low likelihood would have an incredibly high impact? What does that mean for Whatapaka if actually that 2 metres comes quite soon? Yeah? But don't listen to me, I'm just your ordinary scientist. Talk to the best in the world. If you have any time at all, 18 minutes, watch this YouTube. Johan Rockström would have to be possibly the most recognised climate scientist in the world today. I met him in Potsdam Institute 10 years ago. He's been working on planetary boundaries. What are the things that if we go too far, we're going to get ourselves into serious trouble? They've identified 9 planetary boundaries, of which climate change is just one. They've spent the last 20 years assessing these. By the time they got to 2015, they'd assessed 7 out of the 9. 4 planetary boundaries are crossed. In 2023, 2 years ago, 9 boundaries assessed, 6 are crossed, and things are looking bad. We'll see. Antarctica, 10 years ago, everybody thought that when this went down, it's going to be like 200 years, 300 years' time. The changes we are seeing today in the Antarctic are unbelievable. The speed of melt is unbelievable, and I'll leave it for you to decide which of those scenarios you think we're actually on track for today. But again, don't ask me. The World Meteorological Organization has to be one of the most revered scientific institutions in the world, has some of the best scientists working for it, very conservative organization. This is what it said 3 days ago. Yeah, this is the latest science from 3 years ago. 70% chance that the 5-year average will be crossed in the next 1.5 degrees, we're there now. When I started working as a climate scientist 25 years ago, we were told this may happen by the middle of the century. May. Strong possibility that it would happen before the turn of the century. We're going to cross it before 2030, and there is now, for the first time, science that says we could also nudge 2 degrees. I don't know how informed you guys are, but 2 degrees is basically apocalypse. There is no coming back from it. But again, don't ask me, this is science, and I hope that's been somewhat informative. I heard you earlier speakers, I'm not in the hope game, I'm not in the positivity game, I'm in the science game. I'm here to give you factual scientific information. It might make you really depressed, it might make you angry enough that you actually go out and do something about it. Whichever it does, I'm really sorry, whichever reaction I've caused. However, that's the science that I bring you. Thank you very much.